Can 50 chickens on a half-acre residential lot actually generate $25,000 in a year? And what does that number actually cost you to produce? Last year, my tracked gross from the chicken operation on this property was $26,400. Net after feed, bedding, cartons, processing costs, and incubator electricity was $24,800. I want to show you exactly where that money came from, exactly what it cost in time, and the number that most videos about chicken income either don't know or don't want to say out loud. That number is your true hourly rate, and it is the only thing that actually answers the question of whether this is worth doing on your property. This is year 8 of running chickens as a partial income stream on a half-acre lot in central Pennsylvania. I kept a spreadsheet starting in year 3, all after I realized I had no real idea whether I was making money or just generating activity that felt productive. The spreadsheet forced me to find out. What I found is that chicken income is real, it's achievable on a small lot, and it comes from 4 specific revenue streams that each have completely different profit margins per hour of your time. 3 of them are worth building. 1 of them is not, and it's the one most people start with. Near the end, I'm going to tell you which revenue stream produced the highest return per hour of labor on my setup last year, and the number will probably not be what you're expecting. It is not the most labor-intensive thing I do. It might be the easiest. The frame that makes the difference between someone who makes this work and someone who quits by year 2. This is a second job, not a side hustle, not passive income, not a lifestyle choice that happens to generate cash. A second job that starts at 6 in the morning, doesn't take vacation days, and has its most demanding weeks in February and March when you least want to be outside. I want to be direct about that before any math, because the income numbers are real and the time cost is also real, and you need both to make an informed decision. On my setup, I'm averaging about 90 minutes per day from January through October, across all aspects of the operation: feed, water, egg collection, customer communication, processing prep, and sales. November and December drop to about 40 minutes per day because chick hatching stops and meat bird batches are finished. The year-round average works out to about 75 minutes of my time per day. I track this in the same spreadsheet as the revenue because the only number that actually tells you if this operation is worth it is revenue per hour of your own time, and you cannot calculate that without both inputs. My wife handles most of the customer-facing work, which I'd estimate at another 45 minutes daily when you average in the texts, Facebook messages, and drop-off coordination. Call it 2 hours total per day for a 2-person household. Across 10 active months, that's roughly 600 hours of labor to produce $24,800 in net income. At roughly $41 per hour combined, it's legitimate work for a legitimate return. It's not $8 an hour, and it's not free money while you sleep. The people who burn out on this by year 2 are almost always the ones who believed the passive income version of the story. I'm not going to tell you that version. You already sensed it wasn't true, which is why you're still watching past the hook. Egg sales are the first revenue stream most people build, and the one with the lowest per hour return of the 4. That doesn't mean skip it. It means understand what it is: a consistent, predictable base that covers feed costs and funds the higher margin work. On my setup, 30 laying hens averaging 250 eggs per year each, which is conservative for Australorps and black sex links, but realistic once you account for molting periods and seasonal drops, produces roughly 625 dozen eggs annually. At $6 per dozen, which is the price I hold year-round for direct customers in my area of central Pennsylvania, that's $3,750 in gross egg revenue. Feed for 30 hens on Nutrina Nature. Why 16% layer at $24 per 50-pound bag, and roughly the weight of a large bag of dog food at a bag every 3 weeks for 30 birds, runs about $415 per year. Carton cost at 35 cents each adds another $220. Bedding and miscellaneous adds roughly $120. Net egg income after direct costs, approximately $2,995 per year. That number has been within $200 of the same figure for 3 consecutive years on 30 hens, which tells me the egg customer base is saturated at my current price point. I could raise the price from $6 to $7 per dozen and lose maybe 3 customers out of 22. That's a price elasticity test I've been planning to run for 2 years and haven't gotten around to yet. That's not $25,000. That's the base. The time cost on egg collection, cleaning, carton filling, customer pickup coordination, I track at about 20 minutes per day, 365 days a year. At roughly 122 hours annually for $2,995 net. That's about $24.50 per hour. Fine. Not great. The reason you run eggs is that the customers who buy your eggs are the same people who buy your pullets in the spring, your meat birds in October, and refer their neighbors when you open a wait list. Eggs are not your business. Eggs are your customer acquisition system. I stopped thinking of them as a revenue stream and started thinking of them as a marketing cost 3 years ago, and that shift changed how I managed the whole operation. Point-of-lay pullets, hens at or approaching first egg at 18 to 22 weeks old, are the highest net per bird revenue on this list, and the product with the clearest seasonal demand curve you can plan around. A laying pullet sells for $30 to $45 in most markets, depending on breed. A rare or colored egg breed in a market with limited supply sells for $50 to $65 and has a wait list in February and March in most regions of the country. Here is the cost math on a standard production breed like a black sex-link or Australorp. Chick cost from Meyer Hatchery or Hoover's Hatchery at $4.50 to $5.50 each. Feed cost at 16% layer pellets from hatch to point of lay, roughly 18 weeks at a quarter pound per bird per day, which totals about 31 pounds of feed per bird at 48 cents per pound, comes to approximately $15 in feed per bird. Add $1.50 in bedding and miscellaneous costs. Total input per bird, roughly $20 to $22. Sale price at $35 average. Gross margin of $13 to $15 per bird. At 200 pullets per year, which is a manageable number for a half-acre operation with adequate shelter, that's $2,600 to $3,000 in net margin from pullets alone. On a colored egg breed like a French black copper, Morans or olive egger, where chick cost runs $8 to $10 each, but sale price as a point-of-lay pullet runs $55 to $65. The margin per bird roughly doubles. I run 80 colored egg pullets per season at an average net margin of $28 per bird, which adds approximately $2,240 to the colored egg pullet line specifically. The timing constraint is the one most people get wrong. Everybody wants spring pullets. Demand for laying pullets is concentrated in February, March, and April. If your birds aren't at point of lay during that window, you're either holding them at feed cost until fall or discounting them to move inventory. I hatch in October and November to hit point of lay in late February and March. My wife reminds me every October that the garage smells like a brooder. She's right, and she's been right about it for 6 years running. The parent stock management is the part people underestimate when they price pullet sales. Keeping a breeding pen of black sex-links specifically requires sourcing a Rhode Island red rooster over barred rock hens. Because black sex-links are a sex-link hybrid, meaning the male offspring are barred and the female offspring are solid black from hatch, so you can sex them at day 1 without wing feather testing. That sexing ability is what lets you sell pullets as guaranteed females, which is what customers are actually paying for. A guaranteed pullet carries a price premium over a straight-run bird in almost every market I've researched. The New England Small Farm Institute has published on hybrid breed crosses specifically for small farm egg operations, and the sex-link principle they document transfers directly to the economics of pullet sales. You pay for parent stock management, but you recover it in sexed bird price premiums. Build the parent pen first. The pullet revenue follows. Cornish cross broilers are not my highest grossing revenue stream, but they are my highest return per hour of active labor. And that distinction matters when your available time is the real constraint. A Cornish cross chick reaches 5 to 7 pounds of live weight in 8 weeks, roughly 2 months from box to butcher, with a feed conversion ratio of approximately 2 pounds of feed per pound of live weight gain through that window. Though, as documented in Ohio State University Extension, research on the small flock broiler production. After week 8, that ratio worsens toward 3 to 1, which is why processing at 8 weeks is not a preference but a math decision. 8 weeks is where the efficiency window closes. I run 2 batches per year, 50 birds in April and 50 birds in September. In a covered chicken tractor system, that moves daily across the back half of the lot, roughly 60 feet by 50 feet, about the footprint of 3 parallel parking spaces lined up end to end. The setup cost for 2 8x4 tractors was $180 in lumber and hardware cloth the first year. They have run 6 seasons since. Cost per batch of 50. Chicks at $4 each from Cackle Hatchery, $200. Feed for 8 weeks at roughly $12 per week for 50 birds, $96. Processing supplies for on-farm butchering, $45. At miscellaneous mortality allowance, $20. Total cost per batch, approximately $361. Revenue at $4.50 per pound. Dressed weight averaging 5.5 pounds. Dressed per bird at 50 birds processed, $1,237. Net per batch, $876. 2 batches per year, $1,752. Now, the time math. Each batch requires roughly 10 minutes of daily management, tractor move plus feed and water for 56 days, roughly the length of 2 calendar months. That's 560 minutes of daily care, plus 1 processing day at 6 hours with 2 people, plus customer pickup coordination at roughly 2 hours total. Per batch, about 18 hours of labor for $876 net. That's $48.66 per hour, higher than eggs. Lower than one other thing I'll get to at the end, cease. And a regulatory note that applies everywhere I've looked. On-farm processing of fewer than 1,000 birds per year is exempt from USDA inspection under the Poultry Products Inspection Act's producer-grower exemption. But the birds must be sold directly from the farm where they were processed. You can't take them to a farmer's market if they were butchered on your property. Know this before you build the customer expectation. A USDA-inspected custom processor in your county will butcher them for the per bird and return them wrapped and labeled, which lets you sell them anywhere. But that per bird cost has to be included in your price calculation, or it will erase your margin. I use on-farm processing for exactly this reason. At 100 birds per year, paying $0 to a processor would cut my meat bird net income nearly in half. Ori chick sales are the 4th revenue stream, and the one that requires the most infrastructure before it generates income. An incubator, a brooder setup, breeding pens for specific breeds, and a customer base that trusts your hatch rates and breed identification. I started with a $90 Little Giant incubator in year 1, and upgraded to a GQF Hatchmaster cabinet incubator at $650 in year 3 after I'd confirmed the market and the operation. The GQF runs 230 eggs per cycle at 21 days, roughly 3 cycles per month during peak season, giving me theoretical capacity of 690 eggs per month from late February through May. Actual hatch rate on clean fertile eggs runs 75 to 85% in my experience across 6 seasons. Call it 520 to 590 viable chicks per month in a good run. I sell day-old chicks at $8 each for standard production breeds and $12 to $15 each for colored egg breeds. My chick revenue in the calendar year I'm tracking was $8,400 gross, which was my second highest revenue line, net after feed for parent stock, incubator electricity at roughly $22 per month, bedding, and mortality loss in the brooder, approximately $6,200. The time investment is the highest of the 4 streams. Candling eggs, managing incubator humidity, sorting hatchlings by breed and sex when possible, handling customer inquiries, and pickup scheduling for small batches of live animals. I track chick-related labor at about 40 minutes per day during the February through May peak, and 15 minutes per day in the off-season when I'm running the incubator at reduced capacity. Across the year, roughly 180 hours for $6,200 net. That works out to $34.44 per hour, more than eggs, less than meat birds. Breed selection is where the money lives in this line. If you're selling barnyard mixes at $3 each, you're competing with every Craigslist posting in your county. If you're selling documented olive eggers, French black copper Morans, and lavender Americanas, you're selling something most feed stores don't carry, and most hatcheries have a 6-week shipping delay on. Start with the 3 colored egg breeds and build the parent stock before you try to scale the volume. The waitlist mechanic matters more than most people think. I opened my spring chick list in January for April pickup dates. Last January, I had 94 reservations in the first 3 days from people who had been on my notification list since the previous spring. That notification list now has 340 contacts, and roughly the seating capacity of a mid-size restaurant. Those 94 people prepaid a $20 deposit per order, giving me $1,880 in committed revenue before I set a single egg in the incubator. The deposit also confirms intent. The people who put $20 down show up to pick up their chicks. Reservation lists without deposits have a no-show rate of roughly 30% in my experience, which leaves you holding live animals and scrambling to rebook the slot. $2 is not a commitment. $20 is. I started requiring deposits in year 4 after a March where I had 7 no-shows on chick pickup day with 35 birds that needed immediate placement. That will not happen twice to anybody organized enough to read this. If this kind of content is useful to you, subscribe. Every week I cover the practical side of backyard food production with real tracked numbers from a working operation on a residential lot. No product to sell you, just what the spreadsheet shows. There are 5 specific ways this operation fails, and I want to cover them before the payoff, because every one of them has cost me either money or time in the last 8 years. First, market saturation. If 3 other people within 5 miles of your property are selling pasture-raised eggs at $6 a dozen and laying pullets in February, your customer acquisition curve is going to be significantly slower than mine was. Research your local market before you build infrastructure. Post to Facebook Marketplace and see what the response is at your target price point before you buy 50 chicks. Second, no customer list before scaling. The reference script I watched before making this video was from a farm that sells 3,000 to 4,000 chicks per week. I sell 520 to 590 per month at peak. Do not build to their scale on the assumption that the customers will appear. Build the customer list first, then build to the demand. Third, HOA and municipal restrictions. I'm on a half acre in a township without HOA restrictions and with a zoning ordinance that permits up to 50 birds on a lot of at least 15,000 square feet, roughly a third of an acre without special permitting. Many townships in the Northeast permit far fewer, and some municipalities ban backyard poultry entirely. Check this before you spend $1 on infrastructure. A 2-minute call to your township zoning office is worth $2,000 in co-op construction you might have to remove. Fourth, not accounting for your time. If I paid myself $20 per hour for the 600 hours of combined labor I described earlier, that's $12,000, subtracted from the $24,800 net figure, leaving roughly $12,800 in what you might call actual economic profit above a reasonable labor cost. That's still real money from a half-acre lot. It's also not $25,000. The title is gross net, not economic profit above opportunity cost of your own labor. I want to be precise about that. Fifth, winter and cold climates. In Pennsylvania, January and February, drop egg production significantly without supplemental lighting. Freeze nipple waterers below 28 degrees Fahrenheit. And add $8 to $12 per month in heated waterer electricity during the coldest 2 months. The production drops and the operating costs rise simultaneously in a cold northern winter. And the seasonal cash flow matches that shape. Plan for it. The revenue stream with the highest net return per hour of labor, and the one I didn't prioritize until year 5 because it seemed too small to matter. Hatching eggs sold directly to other homesteaders and small flock keepers, not chick sales. Hatching eggs. A dozen hatching eggs from a documented colored egg breeding pen in my operation sells for $25 to $35 depending on breed. A dozen eggs takes me roughly 12 days to collect and store at the right temperature and humidity for shipping or pickup. My active labor to produce them beyond what I'm already doing to manage the laying flock is almost nothing. Collection takes 90 additional seconds per day compared to table egg collection. Packaging for pickup takes 4 minutes. Customer communication averages 6 minutes per order. 12 days of collection plus packaging and communication comes to roughly 20 minutes of active labor per dozen sold. At $30 per dozen, that's $90 per hour of labor. $90 per hour. That is the highest return per hour in the entire operation. And it comes from the flock I'm already feeding and managing for everything else. The constraint is that hatching egg customers are a different customer than egg buyers or pullet buyers, and the market is smaller. I sell roughly 80 dozen hatching eggs per year across 4 colored egg breeds, generating about $2,400 in gross revenue at near zero incremental cost. Net is essentially the gross minus packaging at $1.20 per order, about $2,300. It's not my largest revenue line, but at roughly $90 per hour of incremental labor, it is the most efficient thing I do on this property. The specific breeds that drive this in my market: French black copper Morans for dark chocolate brown eggs, olive eggers for the green and khaki olive spectrum, lavender Americanas for blue. If I were starting this operation today, I would build those 3 breeding pens in year 1 and start the hatching egg customer list. At the same time, I built the laying flock. I built them in year 4. That was 4 years of leaving the highest return revenue stream on the table. The practical setup for hatching eggs is minimal if you're already running breeding pens. A separate collection basket per breeding pen, labeled by breed, rotation. Collect daily, store pointy end down at 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly the temperature of a wine cooler, and set within 7 days for best fertility rates. For direct pickup sales rather than shipped eggs, a foam egg carton at 30 cents each and a breed label printed at home. Total additional equipment cost above what I already own, 0. The incremental cost per dozen is the carton. That is the whole list. The highest return activity on this property requires the least infrastructure of anything I do here. That's the thing I wish I'd understood in year 1, that the efficiency lives not in the animal that produces the most volume, but in the one where your existing investment already covers 98% of the labor. People who make this work past year 3 are not the ones who thought it was going to be easy or passive or meaningful. They're the ones who kept a spreadsheet, adjusted what wasn't working, and treated it like the second job it actually is. The half acre is enough. 50 birds is enough. The question is whether you're willing to do 600 hours of work a year to find out what your specific market will pay for what you specifically produce. Run your own numbers, your feed costs, your local egg price, your township ordinance, your customer base. The math I showed you is from one property in one market. Your version of it will be different. Your egg price, your township rules, your available breeds, your customer acquisition speed will all shift the numbers. But the structure of how chicken income works, what it pays per hour, what the ceiling is on a small lot, and where the efficiency actually lives, that part transfers across almost every setup I have compared notes with over 8 years. The people doing this well are keeping a spreadsheet. Start there.